And my dad moved out to California with my mom and I for high school. And then I got going with the Kane County Cougars when he got transferred to the Chicago area. And at 18 or 19, I went to work for the Kane County Cougars. And 34 years later, I'm still doing exactly what I love. And it's taken me from Kane County, Illinois, to a year in Florida where we ran the Marlins spring training, to 3 years in Nashville, Tennessee, and now 25 years in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then I'll go on to mute, Ben, and other stuff.
All right, so the season's starting this week, so kind of give us an idea of what you're excited about and who we're going to see, what kind of faces, and what's going on starting this week.
Absolutely. So Leo DeVries would be the highlight of prospects on the roster. He's the number one for the Padres and a top 20 on just about every account that does all the major league prospect stuff. So he would certainly be the headliner. A unique thing about this year's team, our manager, Lucas Ray, is 28 years old. So we have a 26-year-old player and a 28-year-old manager. And so that'll be unique. But Lucas has been doing this his whole life and started coaching while in college, managed in the California League last year for the Padres, got his team to the finals, and they lost in the finals. And so I'm excited about that. There's other big prospects. And then around this league, the Midwest League, I should have added, we play high A baseball in our league. There's some big prospects. I expect Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal to be with the West Michigan Whitecaps. That's not official yet, but I expect that to be the case. The Dayton Dragons put out their roster today, and Chase Burns is on it. And so it's a loaded league. It'll be fun to be a part of.
So, yeah, I guess kind of let's go through the history real quick. I'm going to put you on the hot seat. I want to see how many.
I lost you with, I want to see how many.
How many players can you name that have come through Fort Wayne that have made it to the big leagues?
Oh, wow. So we got to 229 this week when Omar Cruz was added to the Padres on the day of. Some of the most famous friends and alumni that we've had come through here: Jackson Merrill, Fernando Tatis Jr., Max Fried, Trey Turner. Then there's other ones that might not be as big as stars as those, but great current major league careers. Guys like Zach Eflin is a dear friend. Jake Peavy is retired now, but he won a Cy Young and a couple of World Series. Jake Bowers is kicking around, I think, still with Milwaukee. There's 32 guys currently in the big leagues that are our alum. And like we said, 229 overall. We have our first manager that's an alum managing in the big leagues. My buddy Will Venable recently got named to the White Sox. Take it easy on my man Will for all the people in the group. It's not his fault they lost 120 games last year. And so, a Hall of Famer yet. Obviously, the best players out there we named, some of those guys could be borderline fringe stuff when their career's all said and done. And one last thing, you were very gracious last year with some promotion of it, Ben, but in the minor leagues, sometimes when a major leaguer gets hurt, they do rehab assignments. And major league players, the people listening might not know, they don't have to do them if they don't want to. But last year we were fortunate enough we got Yu Darvish to do a major league rehab assignment with us. And the year before that, we had Blake Snell do a major league rehab assignment with us. So that's a couple of big names the last couple of years.
I love it, and it's cool too the tradition that of those guys buying dinner for the team too. So I love that part about it.
Let me jump in there real quick if I can. I don't want to talk over you, but on that story, so for everybody, when a major leaguer comes in, I'm going to walk inside real quick, just so in case all the stuff going on out here is messing our signal with the audio. But they buy the spread, like Ben said. So think of a Ruth Chris or a great local steakhouse, the major league player will buy that for the home team when they come in on a rehab assignment. And the cool thing about Yu Darvish, culturally with the Japanese, it's a little different than the Americans. And so Yu Darvish asked the visiting team last year, "Can I do a spread for your team too? Because your players are helping me get back to the major leagues." So he bought the same steak dinner for the visiting team as he did the home guys. Really, really.
I just want to put this out here that if that happens again this year, I'm down for Arby's for the whole crew. It doesn't even have to be the 5 for 10 or whatever it is. So I'm just letting you know.
That's very kind of you.
Just one team though, not everybody. Hey, so which players will be swinging torpedo bats on the TinCaps this
Hey,
year?
that's a great question. So far, the answer to that is none when I last went through there. But let me tell you something. The way major league guys are and minor league guys are, if people think there's a competitive advantage, they will jump on that right away. And I just saw my cheat sheet here, a handful of guys that I didn't mention that are current big leaguers. Xavier Edwards with the Marlins, Ty France, Mackenzie Gore's a big one. I don't know how I forgot him since he had like 14 punch outs on opening night. Phil Maytone, Miles Michaelis, Adrian Morahone, Andres Munoz, the Mariners closer, Graham Pauley, Cal Quantrill, Hunter Renfroe, Jack Sawinski, Travis Jankowski. So quite a few.
Uh, that's okay with the cheat sheet, and the list gets longer every season. So, one thing I noticed, and I guess I didn't really think about, but as I got involved with the team and hear some of the stories and stuff, you know, especially these kids that aren't even 18 yet, and you don't have to name names, or you can give me a personal anecdote, but give me an idea of like what you guys kind of do for a young kid that's away from home, away from his family, and is still learning, getting thrown into adulthood. Never mind just being a professional ball player too.
Great question, Ben. For a lot, to be under 18, for the most part, to be playing in the minor leagues, you need to be from another country. And so I say this about a guy that I've become friends with. I'm not name dropping, but I just saw him last week. He's a big catching prospect, and that's Ethan Salas. And so I can tell this story. Hopefully, nobody's recording it and it'll get me in trouble. But a couple years ago, he was 17 years old playing out in the Cal League. And I'm a former California resident, so not a neighbor, so I don't want to offend the entire state here. But somebody called in and did an anonymous tip to like the governor's office saying that there was a player playing and it was a violation of child labor laws. Well, I'm always trying to get the biggest prospects in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so when I heard this, I reached out to the Padres and I said, fellas, send him my way because the young Amish kids in Northeast Indiana get walking on those roofs at about 12 years old. So we can take him. They came to show the people that were questioning it. It wasn't a big deal by any stretch. I'm not trying to embellish it with some huge story, but like actors and actresses and clearly a lot of people in Hollywood, right? Like with a skill like that, there's kid actors and stuff like that. And so by the time Ethan got to us, he was an old man. He had already turned 18. Ethan is fully fluent in English and Spanish, basically has grown up in the Orlando area down in Kissimmee, Florida. But the Padres really, really care. I'm not a Padres employee. We can talk about that and how the minor league industry works and who do I work for and stuff. But like, so I'm not saying this just to like blow them up, but like they really are good. They really care. 3 or 4 days a week, people, the Latin Americans take English as a second language classes until they test out of it and prove they don't have to. A unique story about a Major League Baseball superstar that started off really, really hot this year is Fernando Tatis Jr. When he played for us, he was 17 or 18 years old. He was fully fluent in English because he grew up around the States with his dad playing for the Cardinals and other teams. And so I'm going to make a correlation. I'm not comparing him to Michael Jordan, okay? But like if people saw The Last Dance during COVID, they'll remember that when Jordan was getting beat up time and again by the Pistons, it finally got him motivated enough where he had never really lifted weights and those kinds of things. The incredible thing, and I understand what happened to Fernando and that he tested positive for something in his career. So I'm not like, avoiding that part of the story. What I am saying is he tested out of the Spanish stuff or the English stuff on day one because he walked in fully fluent. And so when everybody else was in class, he got into the gym and he was lifting every day alone in there with our guys. And you could tell by the work ethic at that time, like we didn't know it would become this, but like, man, that kid is motivated and he's something. So it's really cool.
Love it. And especially I see it with the on-field part of the post-game autographs and stuff. The engagement and the accountability fans. And Bush Jr. great last season, and I think people get the impression that even at that age and this level, they don't want to be bothered. These guys would stay out there to the last possible.
Yeah.
Basically told to go back in. So
I'm so glad you said that, Ben, because, we've been lucky. I've been around, we won't use those names, but I've been around a couple of handfuls in 30 some years of guys that it's like, man, I don't think that guy's ever had a good day in his life, but nobody lately around here. And to a point, we've been on this pretty incredible run. Now, I can't speak for Leo yet because we're just getting to know one another. And to the people out there, we're all in the hobby. And I'm not drawing a direct correlation between autographs and whether somebody's quote unquote a good guy or a bad guy or any of that kind of stuff. But we've been so fortunate, blessed, honored the last several years. We've had some major guys come through here. We had Robert Hassel, Bobby Barrels come through here. One of the first years you were really getting active with us, Ben. And his signing was amazing. We played 70 home games back then. The dude signed every single day, before, after, walking to his car. Jackson Merrill signed as many autographs in Fort Wayne, Indiana as anybody that's ever played here. Ethan did his share last year. They really are approachable. A cool story about Tatis, the first Sunday that he ever played for us back in 2017, he hit a home run on the rooftop structure in center field. We've only had two hit there by TinCaps players since it opened about 10 years ago. And it was a Sunday autograph day. And I said before, he was like 17 or 18 years old. I was his chaperone that year just to make sure fans didn't take advantage. Ben, you and I have seen it. Again, we're not calling people out, but they get back in line 15 times to get an autograph. And so Junior looked at me. He called me Mikey. He still calls me Mikey. We're not like friends or anything, but I saw him 2 weeks ago. He came up, gave me a big hug, which was cool because I know most of these guys before their quote unquote, big time stuff. And he knows I took care of him that year and didn't ask for anything and didn't overstep or anything. But he looked at me straight faced. His lines a mile long, like Homer Bush's lines were all last year. And he looked at me and goes, Mikey, remind me, never hit a home run ever again on Sunday. If you do, these people all want your autograph. And he was mostly joking. And he sat out there and signed for an hour and was so cool. It's a really neat thing to be around minor league baseball. Obviously, in our group, we've got people from all over the country, and there's 120 affiliated minor league teams that'll be playing this Friday, and beyond throughout the summer. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything, but if you get a chance, go out and support the minor leagues. And honestly, you might be friends some people and find some people and become friends with people. There were people in Fort Wayne, Indiana that were invited to Jake Peavy's wedding and stuff like that because they come in and sometimes they just want to go to somebody's house on a Sunday evening for a home cooked meal because they're not used to being away from mama and the family and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the pandemic and stuff before. I want to talk about the community a little bit. And while we're talking, I'm a big advocate for minor league baseball, obviously, and I have been for a while. And I know, obviously, Citizen of the Year right here. So you're entrenched, great community and everything too. Kind of give us an idea of what happened when everything was shut down and the impact that it has on community and why it's important to support your team wherever it may be.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. It was rough. I'm the genius that one day we met up there in our suite level lounge upstairs, and I said to the entire front office staff, hey, there's this virus. It was early on. It was probably March of 2020, and we're not sure where this is going to go, but it looks like we're not going to be working starting next week. And, maybe this will be a couple weeks and we'll see everybody back. And I don't mean to make light of it, but I mean, that was a real brilliant statement, wasn't it? And so we ended up missing the entire year. It was tough. We had to furlough everybody of a 30-person staff, not arrogantly, but one of the most successful minor league teams in the country. I don't mean that to brag, but that's what we've been. And we had to furlough 26 of the 30 people, and it was rough. And again, it's always easy to spend other people's money, right? But minor league baseball did not get any of the national stuff that went to theaters and concert halls, and I'm glad they got it. We weren't bitter about it or anything like that, but we just had to figure out how to make ends meet. And like most minor league teams, we got fun and creative with the marketing and that stuff. We did T-shirts in 2020 to celebrate our undefeated season since we never lost, and all that money helped pay the bills. Of course, we never played, for the people that don't understand the T-shirt and that kind of stuff. And so it was just a lot of fun. We started doing meal kits because so many businesses and restaurants were closed. We would bring in our kitchen, and we ended up doing meal kits for thousands. We did meal kits for thousands and thousands of charities because the homeless people and different people couldn't get their meals from some of the shelters and stuff they normally did. And in a lot of cities, minor league baseball is the lifeblood of the community, and it's no different here. Ben and Midwest Box Breaks are a great partner with the Fort Wayne Comets. Their ECHL hockey, that's going on right now with the autograph booth and the card booth and all that kind of stuff. And then they're out here, and minor league sports, really run a lot of these towns. In Fort Wayne, Indiana, we're the second biggest city in the state of Indiana. We're obviously nowhere near the population of Indianapolis, that has the major league teams and AAA baseball where Paul Skeens was last year. But there's a lot of these second tier cities around the country that minor league baseball is a big thing, and it's big business for the community. We'll draw upwards of 400,000 fans this year, separate from the games where the industry's changed so much. We'll do 600 events and weddings and wedding receptions and things like that. So there's always a lot going on.
I love it. Really, this city is amazing in their support and like that. Since the Wizards came to town,
Yeah.
Kenosha, way back in the early '90s. So I had a couple Break Club members throw some questions at me and stuff. One of them was they want to know the best idea you've seen in minor league marketing that you've been a part of, and maybe the worst one.
The worst comes to mind right away. I'll save that one for after the best. So the best, some of the stuff is not going to like blow somebody away like, oh, that's the greatest thing ever. It's just because some of the stuff, I've been doing this long enough, I'm not taking credit for it. But we were the first team in the Kane County Cougars in the very early 90s that let kids come down and run the bases. All these years later, we're still doing that. After all 66 home games, kids, adults, anybody can run the bases for free. The Sunday autograph stuff is still so cool. It's kind of that field of dreams mentality. I don't take it for granted that I get to walk around a ballpark and step on a ball field, but to still see people, it's like that Charlton Heston, doc, when he walks off the field and he turns into the doctor again and stuff like that. It's neat seeing people walk down in our field. One of the coolest things we ever did in Fort Wayne, we had two very successful first two seasons. And in the third year, we were the first major or minor league team ever that did a 3D night, and the entire video board was in 3D and all kinds of stuff. We got write-ups in the Sports Business Journal, USA Today. And then the other thing that comes to mind, and then I'm going to the worst, and I think I'm going to get some laughs out of the group. But the other thing that comes to mind is at the old stadium when I was in Fort Wayne, Wizards at Memorial Stadium, we had a partnership with Verizon. No, I'm not selling anything or any plugs, but their spokesperson was James Earl Jones. And I cut a deal with them, and Mr. Jones came in. And pregame, we got a group down near the old picnic area, I would say 150 to 200 kids, and he recited KC at the bat, and it was awesome. And then for the national anthem that day, we've all seen, every event we go to, somebody singing the anthem. He didn't sing it, but with those booming pipes, he recited it, and he was so cool. He was so gracious and genuine. He signed an hour's worth of autographs for fans. He was signing Darth Vader figurines. He was signing all kinds of stuff. True story. I know I see Jim Garrigan, Invisible Vet, saying, "That's right. I remember that." He was probably there that day. One of my young sales guys, I prepped everybody. Don't ask this guy for something out of school. If you want something to get autographed or a picture, we can do all that. Like our person that I was working with said he's cool with all that stuff, but you need to do it the right way. Well, I walked to the bathroom, I come back, and Mr. Jones didn't look all that happy. And I said, "Is everything all right?" "Well, your one sales rep just asked him to record his voicemail." And so we had a sales rep call him Kyle, wink, wink, because I think that was actually his name. "Hey, this is James Earl Jones, and you've missed Kyle. He's away from his desk. If you could leave a message." And so Mr. Jones was gracious to do that. So now the worst. So, like, you can't take risks in life and have some success without absolutely bombing. And so I'm at the Kane County Cougars 1992, 3, 4, and 5. We were a Baltimore Orioles affiliate the one year and a Florida Marlins affiliate, and every guy came through there. Kevin Millar and Miggy Cabrera and everybody came through there. And getting ready to do something, and a guy sold it as, "We're bringing in a magician called the Great Colita." And it's like vaudeville. It's like Barnum and Bailey, the that kind of stuff. This is back in the days of Captain Dynamite and the Dynamite Lady and Human Cannonball and all that kind of stuff. And there wasn't all the YouTube stuff or any of this stuff. So you really had to go to the events to see it. And so we had a great sales guy, and he sold this thing, and it was going to be post game. We set the thing up where this guy was going to go at home plate in a dunk tank filled with water in the straitjacket and do that in front of, we drew upwards of 10,000 people on the big nights in the Chicago suburbs. Something happened with this magician. It was a little shady, and the details of it were a little shady, not the person. And so we ended up having to do it pregame. Minor league baseball stuff can get tough at times with budgets and things like that. So at the last minute, our GM decided we're not going to fill the duck tank with water because I can get it sponsored by Budweiser. We're going to fill it with beer. And the magician jumped in there. The whole thing happens. It goes off without a hitch. The guy gets himself out of the straitjacket, all that kind of stuff. And, what we learned is when the 200 and some pound magician jumps in the dunk tank, it displaced what? 5 gallons of beer? The umpire and the catchers couldn't see because there were so many gnats and flies and things like that attracted to the beer that we had to delay the game to come in and redo the whole home plate area and stuff like that. So we've had plenty of mistakes and errors over the years.
Wow, that's a crazy one. That's replace water with beer. What could go wrong?
Got to get it paid by the sponsor, though. You know the deal.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So another one was, and I've heard part of the story before, but especially for collectors and stuff too. Tell us about the time you met Tony Gwynn, and
love it.
Kind of tell us about that.
Love it. So, guys, I'm 52 years old. I'm a baseball lifer. From going to games at Old Municipal Stadium, dubbed the Mistake by the Lake in Cleveland, that held 78,000 people. And so if there was 8,000 people there, it looked like it was, just dead. And so I've grown up around the game. And so there's been a handful of times, that being the one that I come up with the most, that I was really, really in awe. So Tony was on the disabled list for the San Diego Padres, and back then you were allowed to play exhibition games in your minor league cities. The Players Union has gotten that out of their contracts now, and so they don't do that stuff anymore. Once the season starts, they can still do it preseason. And so the Padres had Ricky Henderson that year. They had like the Ryan Klesko group, like a lot of, really nice players, and Phil Nevin and that kind of stuff are some of the names that come to mind. And of course, Gwynn. And so Tony was on the DL. So I had my sights set that he probably wasn't going to make the trip to Fort Wayne in between like Cincinnati and Chicago on a day off. And sure enough, he did. Ricky Henderson didn't make the trip, and he was on the active roster. Imagine that. He did not show up in the ballpark, but Tony shows up. We had talked to the Padres ahead of time. They said, "Yeah, we think he's coming." And I said, "It was pretty custom. Hey, will he sign some stuff?" And they said, "Yeah, Tony's the greatest. He's the best. You don't have to worry about any of that." And so he walks in. Everybody walks in, and he, honest to goodness, if the game was at 2 o'clock that day, he got in there at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I spent hours with him. And I have stories to last a lifetime. He was incredible. He was gracious. He was humble. We had some great dialogue. He looked at me and he looked over at the stack of stuff. It had to be 5, 10 dozen baseballs, bats, pictures. He said, "No problem. That's a lot of stuff, though." And I said, "Yeah, if you don't want to sign it all, if you can't sign it all, don't worry about it." He looked at me. He goes, "Mike, I'll sign every single thing sitting there, but I got one deal." And I said, "What's that?" "Once I start signing, you stay with me the whole time, and we do not ever add anything to that stack." And I said, "You got it." And he goes, "Sometimes I'm too nice to people, and the next thing I look over, I've already signed half the baseballs. I go to the bathroom, I come back, and there's twice as many there again." And I said, "No, no." And so we had fun. He was cool. He signed jerseys. I still have his jersey hanging up in my basement, along with a bat and a ball. And for me, it's more about the few hours that I spent with him. We talked about his kid, Tony Jr., who's one of the broadcasters for the Padres now, who came through our league with Prince Fielder in the same year in Beloit. We talked to all kinds of stuff. Last part of the Gwynn story, he looks over at me and he says, "Hey, we've had no problems. You've been great, but I got a problem." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "I'm the last big leaguer that buys all of my own bats." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I literally pay for my own bats." Tony's credited by most major league players as being the first guy ever to use video to any regard. Him and his wife Alicia used to sit out in the garage and splice VHS and stuff and watch his at bats. And so I said, "Tony," he said, "I want to know where you got those 6 bats, my Louisville Slugger model." I said, "I called down to Louisville Slugger and I called the gift shop and they sold them to me." And he said, "If that story checks out, I'll sign them for you. But if it doesn't," and I said, "Hey, Tony, you've been great, man. If you don't want to sign them, don't worry about it. It's no big deal." And he goes, "No, if your story checks out, I'll sign them." He pulls out his cell phone. Yeah, we had him back then. He calls Louisville, his rep. I'm in Fort Wayne. "I've got a guy here, Mike Nutter. He says he ordered these from you. I want to know why you sold them to him. Did you sell them to him? And I have an exclusive so nobody can get them." And I learned that day, I don't have one with me, but if you have a Louisville Slugger bat and in the logo, not down where the guy's name is, but the logo where it might say 125 years, fire branded, if the number is underlined, then it wasn't the actual player's bat, but a replica. And so the rep explained that to Tony. He hung up the phone. He goes, "All good. Your story checks out. I'll be glad to sign them all." And so he was so gracious. At the time, he still had a house in Fishers, Indiana, which is not all that far from here. Because I said, "I got to be honest, I can't believe you came on the day off." And he said, "Well, I get home to see Mama and some other friends and family tonight in Fishers after the game, so I wanted to come out."
That's what a guy, and it's for as great as he was as a player, I mean, just as nice and genuine as
No
a.
question.
Hey, I know we're a little light on time here, so the guys are curious about what you collect and what you're into, and
Yeah.
and
And
stuff.
I got time. If you want to go all the way up to the next guy, I don't want to take over. So whatever time you want to do, I'm good with.
Oh,
So, you know, uh, long suffering Cleveland sports fan. And so a lot of that stuff is in the collection. And I don't say it with any like bravado or arrogance. Hey, look at me. But some of the best stuff in my collection is stuff that guys gave me. Some are big time names, right? But then others, they might not have played a year in the big leagues. They might not have gotten a cup of coffee, stuff like that, where that's the stuff. And so there's some really cool, like stuff like that I'll see somebody's name come across. And Sometimes I'll try and buy some unique item. I'm actually, um, buying a good amount right now of Leo. DeVries, I've heard it pronounced both ways. DeVries is what I think it is. Um, I haven't even seen him play a game yet. So I'm not trying to get everybody in our group to raise their prices because normally when they get for sale in there, I try and look at buying stuff. Um, but the reports for me, and trust me, I've done this a long time where not everybody makes it, not everybody this and that, but like for me, the way the San Diego Padres talk about this young man is the closest I've ever heard anybody talk about Junior, Fernando Tatis Jr., where they talk about the confidence and the vocal, the swagger, the just the energy. Mike Daly, who was my manager last year, but he's also the assistant farm director of the Padres. He was the assistant general manager of the Texas Rangers for 8 years. He texted me when the lineups became official, and he said, "I'm telling you right now, at the end of the year, this guy will be in the top 10 favorites you've ever worked with as a person." He said, and we're pretty comfortable with the talent as well. So Leo's a lot of what I've been buying now. In fact, as you look at my desk, there's a stack here that maybe I'll see if he'll sign one or two of them someday, but we haven't gotten to know each other yet, so I'm not sure. And so really fun stuff. And then I'd also love to shout out a couple guys come to mind. Zach Eflin. He's a starting pitcher. I think he got the opening day start this year with the Baltimore Orioles. Zach is a top 5 human being I've ever met and I've ever been around. And he was with Tampa. Like a lot of people, the Padres traded him for future major league talent and that kind of stuff. But he had a nice start to his career in Tampa, and then he's up in Baltimore now, and he's really, really exciting. And if anybody wanted to Google sometime on their own time, Zach Eflin's background and his story, he has 1,000 reasons not to be the man and the husband and the father that he is, the major league pitcher that he is. Grew up in a really, really, really tough deal. And he is a top 5 human being I've ever met. Once a year, I'll get a text from a fan. Hey, we were in Cincinnati and we had some TinCaps gear on, and Eflin came over and said, "Tell Nutter when I retire, I'm coming back to Parkview Field to watch a game." And again, none of these are meant to be about me. There's some really, really, really good guys out there playing Major League Baseball. We touched on autographs before. Autographs are tough. During the season at the major league level, at the minor league level, there's great access. But I would tell people out there, if you ever get a chance to sneak down to Florida or Arizona, we were down there a couple weeks ago, and the access during spring training is usually pretty good, where even some of the superstars are out and about meeting fans and doing stuff before the craziness and the pressure of the regular season gets rolling.
That's get to talk about your trip to Arizona.
Yeah, we went down. We don't go down every year, but there's like that line in Dazed and Confused where I keep getting older, but they stay the same age. Big Dazed and Confused guy here with the Wooderson character specifically. And so it's like I got a 28-year-old manager. I got a prospect that's 18 years old that's a top 10 prospect on a lot of lists. And so we just went down. In my case, my wife went and my 2 kids that lined up with their spring break at IU. They're both students down at IU Bloomington. And so we had fun. We did everything from meet with the manager and take the staff out to dinner because 2 weeks ago, I had only met one person that I'm going to spend the next 5.5 months with on our coaching staff, and that's our pitching coach, Thomas Eshelman. Awesome story. Esh is one of the top probably 20 college pitchers of all time. I think he went to Cal State Fullerton. He loves telling people. Esh pitched in the big leagues, I think the COVID year, but certainly the year before. And he's got a video on his phone. He's going to love that I tell this story publicly. He's got a video on his phone anytime anybody, and he's totally self-deprecating. Like his humor is so awesome. It's a lot like you, Ben. We're like, we know the pop culture stuff. We make fun of others, but we give it to ourselves and let others give it to ourselves just as much. Somebody else mentioned Ohtani. Oh, Ohtani, huh? Yeah, I'm familiar with him. And then he's got the video queued up on his phone where he punched out Ohtani the first time he ever faced him. So Esh is in his 30s. I mean, he's probably a future major league pitching coach. He hasn't been retired but a couple of years, and they moved him right into coaching because of how much they think about him. And what's funny is you got to have him in the right mood. I can usually get him in the right mood. And then you say, did you ever face him again? Because that same game where he struck him out on the first at bat, I believe the next pitch he threw him in the second at bat, I think they said it was 460 feet. And so we got out there, we met the staff. We were also tourists. We went to a Phoenix Suns game and crisscrossed the valley out there and climbed Camelback Mountain. But most of the days were starting at the complex with the minor league guys on the back fields and seeing stuff and meeting people because, again, we're going to spend months with these young men, the players and the coaches and the staff, and we just want them to let them know, hey, we're not here to get anything from you. We're here to, provide for you guys. We're trying to get more guys to the big leagues, and hopefully you can come through Fort Wayne and do it that way.
I think that was the big thing I learned watching Salas here too, because there was the public perception of Salas.
Yeah.
Real deal. This is a kid. He was a kid. And, from day one, everybody wanted something from him. And he was generous with his time. He was great with the kids. He was a good sport, so to speak.
Yes.
He had people that wanted that narrative that, hey, here's a spoiled kid,
Yeah. I mean, on that front, you're exactly right. Like, I'm a fan of Ethan. I'm a fan of him as a human being. I'm a fan of him as the player. The Padres have had him at all these levels when he literally wasn't old enough to vote. You know what I mean? And so AA assignment at his age is going to be tough this year, but he looked physically much more developed this spring when we just saw him. And he really had a lot of time for people. There was an incident at one of the visiting parks this year where people followed him all the way back to the hotel, were yelling expletives, because no matter when you stop signing, there's one more person. And Ethan didn't take the bait. He's a pro's pro. Both of his brothers are in the minor leagues. His dad looks like he should be an NFL linebacker. And so it's like, no, like the stuff he was so good. I was the same way, Ben. Everybody was asking for him. I didn't ask for anything. The final day of the year, we get done, and I gave him a big hug. And I just said, man, I enjoyed it. Get to the big leagues. Go play 10 years in the big leagues. I'm not going to ask you for anything other than a picture someday. And he said, I got an extra one of these with your name on it. And he pulled out a bat, and he had written a nice little personal note, to Nutter, thanks for everything, like that, like genuine stuff. And that's like the kind of stuff that I have. But I have those from guys that never made it out of A-ball that are on my wall because it's just like, I'll think back to, man, that summer in 1996 in the Florida State League where my manager was Freddie Gonzalez, who went on to manage the Marlins and the Atlanta Braves. And one day, we weren't very good that year. If Freddie would ever see this, he'd remember. And it wasn't his fault. And so one day I walked through and he's yelling, Nutter, get in here. And I said, is everything all right? Yeah, we're toasting. And I said, that's awesome. Especially back then, I would toast to anything. And I said, what are we toasting to? We're not going to lose 100 games. And so, the competition is real. The last story I'll tell you in the autograph stuff, we had Max Clark come in last year. Huge prospect, top 10, 20, 30 guy on every list like Leo and Ethan and those guys. And it was his first time playing back in the Hoosier State since he got drafted out of high school, I think second or third overall by the Tigers. And he was great to work with. I spent 6 days with him. I had an absolute blast. He's the new age. Everybody out there watching this, it's new age. I'm not so old school that I can't appreciate it and stuff. It's cool. I loved everything about it. My son's 21. That's probably about Max's age. And it's just to see the bright neon and all the stuff. It's flashy. It's cool. He was cool. He was gracious. He was genuine. But it was not an incident by any stretch, but we had a situation where somebody claimed, hey, I'm in his family and all this and they weren't. And people are just always trying to get access and to get close to people and that kind of stuff. And it's unfortunate because no matter how many they sign, and up at the West Michigan Whitecaps, where hopefully Max plays this year, they haven't announced any rosters, but if he's back in our league for a little bit, like us, They do Sunday autograph days. They do theirs pregame. And so you can usually still get access to most minor league guys before they make it too big. Max signed a ton last year.
Yeah, I just found some. Where the heck did I put them? Some Kevin McGonagall's
Yeah.
up there. Don,
Well, that's perfect timing because he doesn't have any Bowman yet. And sitting here on my desk here at work, I hate to do some of the other stuff, but I got some McGonagall Prism. Doesn't look like that's coming through very good. And then some what is it? Goodwin Champions.
yeah.
And so he was so cool for us to work with. And he laughed. He would walk over with Max. They're great friends. They were drafted both out of high school the same year, both very high. And Max had a million Bowman and all that kind of stuff. So McGonigal would walk by all the autograph seekers because he didn't have one card last year. And so this year, I think it's going to catch up to him because he is rocketing up so many of these prospect list that I hope Kevin's back in the league for a little bit. And then I hope they go play a long, long time in Detroit with the Tigers.
So, the thing I wanted to ask you about is obviously you get excited about all the talent that comes through, but there's a tipping point. If you're winning games, you're going to get more attention. Guys are hitting better. Guys are playing.
Yeah.
They move up. I guess where's that balance for you and the overall scheme of the farm system from, hey, you're going to start pulling all our guys. We're winning.
Yeah.
We're going to kill our momentum.
Yeah. So my balance and the Padres' balance doesn't always line up one on one. And so what I mean by that is they control all the players. They're their employees. They promote them, demote them, release them, call them to the big leagues, all that kind of stuff. So we have no input in that. But yeah, like a couple years ago, I mean, we had Jackson Merrill till he played in the Futures game. And then he went to Double-A, never played a day in Triple-A. And last year he wins 2 out of 3 rookies of the year. And you and I, Ben, wish he would have won all 3 rookies of the year for different reasons. You could have cashed in and I could have gotten another number 1 pick coming through the ballpark. But it's like that year we had Graham Pauley and Robbie Snelling and Jacob Marcy, who went on to be the Arizona Fall League MVP that year and stuff. And guys kept coming in and we kept winning and they would promote them as quick as they got here. And we made the playoffs that year and we lost. And I understand. Back when I was a lot younger and more vocal in my position, I would call the Padres and be like, hey, we're trying to win too. But again, what we're all trying to do is get a real big fancy ring from the World Series. And the Padres got close last year, right? And then the Dodgers shut them down those last 2 games where they didn't score any runs. But maybe people on here know it, maybe they don't. But minor league general managers, that's a true statement, and minor league assistant general managers get the same World Series ring that the players get if their affiliate would ever happen to win a championship. And so I'm starting year 34. I have 1 minor league championship, and I have 0 of the major league championships. And last year was as close as we got, and I was on the edge of my seat when Tanner Scott was coming in and blowing away Ohtani in that game 1. And it's like, I'm looking at my son and I'm trying not to dream too much of like, oh man, this could be the year. And it ended just like all the other ones.
Wow, how crazy would that be to get a ring too?
No, it'd be wild. I got buddies with him. I'm a long-suffering Cleveland fan, like I told people. So in the year that it was the Cleveland and the Cubs, I had tickets to all 7 games in both ballparks. And I went to game 1 in Cleveland and the Tribe. Again, that's what they were back then, 1 game 1. My son and I went to game 4 in Wrigley Field. The Tribe wanted to go up 3-1. And like every Ohio sports story, they never won another game. In the morning of game 7, I gave my 4 tickets away. And people are like, you're nuts. And I said, I know how this movie ends. I can't go. And sure enough, I thought it was a pretty bad decision. When Rajay Davis went deep off Chapman, I'm like, I just missed out on the greatest thing of my life. And then, of course, Hayward gives that speech and my team takes the L.
Yeah, so you mentioned that. So I guess what it can be sports or it can be anything, Mike. What's kind of on your bucket list of things you still need to do yet?
That's a great question. Wow, that's really, really good. I know it's on my wife's bucket list to get to Europe sometime. We've been blessed to be able to travel around. Out there would be absolutely awesome. For she just dreams of going to Italy someday, so we'll get over there sometime. Um, and then it would be an absolute dream come true if a team we were with was able to ever win the for the baseball and for the sports stuff to be able to win a World Series, because that would be, we wouldn't take credit for it. Like, is Jackson Merrill who he is because of Fort Wayne? No, absolutely not. But he honed his craft here and he loved it here, and now he's up there doing it at the biggest stage. So from a baseball standpoint, that'd be about the one last thing that our group would be able to get, and that'd be really, really cool. Or maybe the other thing that I would say is maybe someday do this long enough where one of our players gets into the Hall of Fame. And I can tell you right now, I would get in the car and drive out to Cooperstown, New York, and see it myself, and not look for a shout out or anything or a picture or anything, but just to think, man, we knew this young guy when he was 18 or 21, and here he is.
Do you guys, is there anybody that's close or on the path or when they're eligible?
Yeah,
Nobody's.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's part of the story because he's still so young. But with what Fernando had happen, that probably is not going to be in play. Now, he's got 20 years to prove that that was a one-time thing. I don't know if Trey Turner will be able to, play long enough, several great years. One of the guys that gets tons of pub on like some of the veteran committee stuff is Torrey Hunter. And so he did not get in on the writers, but with all these new stats that I don't even understand them, with some of the war and some of all those other names and abbreviations, I'm old school. I'm home runs, RBIs, and batting average. But Hunter ranks really, really high, where people have said a lot, hey, he's getting in someday on the Veterans Committee, because over 2,000 hits and all the gold gloves and all the all-stars. I wasn't around for him, but that would still be really, really cool to have a Fort Wayne guy get in that way. And then we've seen plenty of guys come through the league against us. Albert Pujols, A-Rod can't get in the Hall of Fame, it doesn't appear. But, a lot of the best that have come through here. Mike Trout played in this ballpark in 2010. He was in the Home Run Derby. And so a lot of cool stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember those early. I used to skip school and go to the Wednesday Businessman Special.
Yeah.
Corey Hunt.
Yeah.
Remember, I think it was Puckett hit a ball in like a exhibition game that I don't think has even landed yet.
Yeah, that is true. And back then, for that exhibition, Puckett and Dave Winfield both came in and played in it. And again, they didn't have to way back then. And both those guys ended up in the Hall of Fame. So really cool stuff.
Hey, so let's get serious for a minute. What's the deal with Relish, and why is he still around, and is he ever going to win?
That's a great question. So for people that don't know, we have a condiment race, and we've done it for a few years. And ketchup, mustard, and relish has never won a race. There's been so many times it looked like it was his time. And I mean, we've had some celebrities come out. We had Hacksaw Jim Duggan, WWE Hall of Famer, hit him over the head with a 2x4. He had the win that day. We had NFL guys take him out. Jesse Bates has taken him out, the all-pro safety for the Falcons. And so, man, it's taken on a life of its own. I think this is the year.
Is there a way I can gamble on it?
No, because I just did my gambling training with MLB last week. And so, no, I cannot condone or you might be able to with several fine members of this group, but I would have to sit that one out.
All right. Yeah, I don't want to. We need you around. So, I guess, I guess, unless you haven't thought about it, what do you want to do? How long do you want to do this? Is there something you're looking at down the road that you've thought about, or?
That's such a great question. And I have started to think about it. And no, not that I have one foot out the door. I'm still only 52, upper middle age, I like to call it. I've done this since I was 18 or 19. And so I don't golf. I don't really fish much anymore. So this is what I do. This is what I love to do. And this is what I want to continue to do. And I would think that at this point, this will be the last place I ever do it. Although Mama's ready to move somewhere warmer, and like she could move tomorrow if the moving van could get there in time. She's a Warsaw, Indiana native, but I think I've got several more in me here at Parkview Field. And after that, I don't know. At that point, see what the kids and grandkids and that future grandkids and stuff like that are up to. Or I'll just go back to some ballpark and be an usher and that kind of thing, and still be around the game. Like I see those ushers at Peoria Sports Complex when we were out there a couple weeks ago in Arizona and stuff. They're still around the game. They're having a blast, and they're not just sitting around, the house all the time, because I wouldn't be very good at that.
Hey, so I want to give you a chance to kind of wrap up here, and we're gonna raid into Brandon here in a minute. But I just want to say, on behalf of our group and our community and my family and everything, you're one of those people. As I've got to know you more, I think I can count on one hand the people that are actually genuine all the way through. And it doesn't matter if you're working at the concession stand, you're the president of MLB or a Hall of Famer or whatever. You treat everybody the same, and you're so generous with your time. I know your faith is important to you too, and you're pretty open about that, and I respect the heck out of that. And just a real nice guy. You've been great to us. You've been great to our Break Club community and MBB, and I owe you so much personally for some wax you picked up for me, so I owe you that. But you're just the real deal, Mike, and we appreciate the heck out of you. And however you want to wrap this up, it's all yours. And appreciate you.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm not just hyping. That means a lot. And so that's cool. I used to be driven by all the wrong stuff. The next sale, the next dollar. Like I didn't have this planned ahead of time. Like I really didn't. Maybe the next cold beer, maybe the next girl I was chasing before I met Beth. but I was going after all the wrong stuff, and it was just, I was never fulfilled. And so, yeah, faith is important in my life, but instead of getting into that, like there are a lot of parallels with the group, with respect the hobby and the people in it and that kind of stuff. And I stopped chasing all this other stuff that just was the shiny object. And it was like, I'm going to start just pouring into these next generation of minor league executives and things like that. And now here we are a few years later, and one of my former guys is running the low A team for the Royals in Columbia, South Carolina. Another one's been running the Bowling Green Hot Rods. And again, I'm not taking credit for them or anything like that, but like we're starting to create this little family or this tree that's come through here, and hopefully they're doing it the right way. And so there's a lot of days I wish I could be a lot more active in the group, but this job is preventing that for a little while now. But I appreciated this tonight. I hope I didn't bore too many people, and the hour went very quickly for me.
Yeah, again, I appreciate you, and obviously I'll see you here this weekend, maybe as early as tomorrow, weather permitting. So you've got.
I hope so.
Open house. Call it open house. I don't know what else to call it. Open house. And opening day is Friday. Again, weather permitting, and then we'll be there for the card booth and everything. Sunday, it looks like maybe bring your hat and your scarf and stuff.
Yeah. I told the guys got here from Phoenix last Saturday and it was 70. And they're like, yeah, we heard this was cold. I said, stick around, boys. You'll get to see snow. Don't worry. You'll get to see all 4 seasons in the month of April in the Summit City.
Hey, Mike, we're going to raid into Brandon now, Zebra Breaks, and I'll see you soon. And again, I appreciate you so much, man.
Thanks, my friend. See ya. Thanks, everybody.